He tried to ruin my life, now he wants to marry me. Intro. Hi guys, welcome to another episode. If you're ready for drama, betrayal, and a fake relationship with a man you love to hate, you're in the right place. Kindly leave a like and comment at the end of this. Thank you. Prologue. I never meant to fall in love with Dominic Blackwell. In fact, there was a time I would have happily pushed him into oncoming traffic. The man destroyed my career with a few carefully chosen words, made my name toxic in the only industry I'd ever loved, left me drowning in bills and doubt while he carried on making millions. I hated him with the kind of passion usually reserved for first loves. Then one night, my phone lit up with a message that would change everything. Dinner, 8 p.m. wear black. Dominic. I should have blocked his number. Should have told him exactly where he could shove his dinner invitation. Should have protected what was left of my dignity. Instead, I said yes. That was my first mistake. My second, agreeing to his insane proposal. Pretend to be his girlfriend for 6 months to salvage his public image. A business arrangement, he called it. Complete with contracts, NDAs, and enough money to rebuild my life. No emotions, he'd insisted, those dark eyes unreadable across the table. This is strictly professional. I signed my name with a steady hand, convinced I could fake adoration for a man I loathed. After all, I'm a PR expert. Fabricating feelings is practically in my job description. But here's what they don't tell you about pretending to be in love. Sometimes, when you're pressed against someone at a gala, whispering inside jokes while cameras flash, when you're laughing over breakfast because he can't work the coffee maker, despite his 3 engineering degrees, when you're fighting in the rain and suddenly, his mouth is on yours, with no audience to perform for. Sometimes the lines blur. Sometimes pretending becomes real. And sometimes, the man who tried to ruin your life becomes the one you can't. Imagine living without. My name is Ava Monroe. And this is the story of how I broke the first rule of fake relationships. Don't fall for the person you're pretending to love, especially when that person is Dominic Blackwell. The most infuriating, complicated, beautiful mistake I've ever made. Chapter 1. Ava Monroe's heels clicked against the marble floor of Blackwell Industries as she hurried toward the conference room. Her phone buzzed for the 15th time that morning. All messages from different news outlets demanding a statement. Not now, she muttered, swiping away notifications with her thumb, while balancing a coffee in a portfolio in the other hand. The glass. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 1? Help outline the rest of the story? Or work on specific scenes? For example, their first fake date, a big twist, or the inevitable, I think I'm actually in love moment. He tried to ruin my life. Now he wants to marry me. Prologue. I never meant to fall in love with Dominic Blackwell. In fact, there was a time when I used to fantasize about seeing him, humiliated on national television, fired, cancelled, maybe even sued into oblivion. He didn't just burn bridges. He bulldozed mine and lit the ashes on fire. With a few cold, calculated words, he demolished my reputation. One quote in a business magazine, an offhanded remark about emotional instability and poor leadership. And suddenly, I went from rising PR star to industry poison. No one wanted to touch me. Not with a 10-foot pole or a glowing recommendation. My inbox dried up. My savings drained. And my once promising career was a smoldering wreck. All while he kept climbing higher. Dominic Blackwell, CEO, media darling, tech visionary. With his tailored suits and uncheckable calm, he always looked like he knew 10 moves ahead of the rest of us. Maybe he did. I hated him. Truly, deeply, passionately hated him. So when my phone lit up one night with a message from the devil himself, my first instinct was to throw it across the room. Dinner, 8 p.m. Wear black. Dominic. No context. No apology. Just a demand. I should have deleted the text. I should have blocked his number and moved on. But I didn't. Instead, I stood in front of my closet at 7 p.m., heart hammering, and pulled out a black dress I hadn't worn since my last client. Gala back when I had clients. That was my first mistake. The second was agreeing to what came after dinner. A deal. Pretend to be his girlfriend for 6 months. Publicly. Convincingly. To soften his image after a PR. Scandal left shareholders. Twitchy and headlines brutal. In return, he'd pay me enough to rebuild my career. Enough to breathe again. This is strictly business, he said, sliding the contract across the table. No feelings. No complications. His voice was cool. His eyes, those impossibly dark eyes, gave away nothing. Not guilt, not desire, not even amusement. I signed anyway. I told myself it was just another job. A performance. And if anyone could fake being madly in love with the man who almost ruined her life, it was me. I'm a PR strategist. I lie for a living. But here's what no one tells you about pretending to love someone. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between the flashing cameras and staged affection, you forget you're pretending. Like when he touches the small of your back in a crowded room and it actually feels safe. Or when he kisses you in the middle of a fight. Not because the paparazzi are watching, but because he wants to. My name is Ava Monroe. And this is the story of how I broke every rule I made for myself. Especially the most important one. Don't fall in love with Dominic Blackwell. The offer Blackwell Industries. Each step slicing through the silence like a warning shot. She was late. And Dominic hated tardiness. Not that she cared what he hated. Her phone buzzed again 16th notification this morning. All from news outlets and bloggers, hungry for a soundbite. Ava Monroe seen entering Blackwell HQ. Are they back together? Or is it just damage control? Inside the scandal that could topple a tech empire and the woman who might save it. She gritted her teeth and swiped them away. Juggling a coffee cup. A leather portfolio, and what little remained of her patience. The glass walls of the conference room loomed ahead, all cold steel and intimidation. He was already there, of course. Dominic Blackwell didn't wait for anyone. He stood at the far end of the room, back to the door, dressed in another one of his ridiculously perfect suits, charcoal grey today, with a navy tie that made his eyes look almost kind. Almost. He turned as she entered. And just like that, the room felt smaller. You're late, he said, without looking at the clock. You're predictable, she shot back, setting her coffee down a little too forcefully. He arched one brow, amused. Still charming, I see. And still insufferable, she replied smoothly, crossing the room and dropping her portfolio onto the polished table. Let's skip the small talk. Why am I here, Dominic? He didn't sit. Just stood there, silent for a moment, studying her like she was both an asset and a liability, calculating. Always calculating. Finally, he spoke. I need your help. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You need my help? What a plot twist. He didn't flinch. This scandal is bigger than I anticipated. The board is panicking. Investors are circling like sharks. I need to look stable, relatable, human. And you think dating me will do that? She asked, incredulous. No, he said calmly. I think falling back in love with you will. She stared at him, heart thudding. And in that moment, Ava Monroe realized two things. This man was out of his mind. She might just be crazy enough to say yes. Would you like to continue into the dinner flashback, their contract negotiation, or a dramatic moment like their first fake public appearance? The mistake. I didn't plan on falling in love with Dominic Blackwell. Actually, for a long time, I planned on hating him for the rest of my life. And I did. Hate him. I mean, with the kind of bone-deep fury that twists your stomach and makes you mutter curses into your pillow at 3 a.m. Dominic didn't just hurt me, he annihilated me. With a few casually cruel remarks during an interview, he pulled the rug out from under my entire career. He didn't mention me by name, of course. Men like him never do. But anyone in the PR world knew exactly who he was referring to. Some people let emotions cloud their judgment. That's why you don't put fragile people in charge of a billion-dollar brand. 10 seconds. That's all it took for the phone calls to stop, the meetings to get cancelled, the contracts to dry up. One vague, icy quote, and I was done. Labeled as unprofessional, difficult, toxic. The woman who couldn't handle the pressure. I lost my apartment 3 months later. Sold my car just to keep the lights on. My name, once respected in every boardroom, from Manhattan to LA, became a cautionary tale whispered over cocktails. And Dominic? He thrived. Gracefully, obscenely, publicly. New ventures. Magazine covers. Awards. Talks. As if the man who gutted my career hadn't lost a wink of sleep. So, when my phone buzzed on a stormy Thursday night, and his name lit up the screen for the first time in 2 years, I should have thrown it straight into the sink. Dominic Blackwell. Dinner. 8 p.m. Wear black. No apology. No explanation. Just an order. I stared at the message for 5 minutes, heart pounding. And then, like a woman with no sense of self-preservation, I replied, "Fine." That was my first mistake. The second? Letting him slide that NDA across the table while murmuring words like business arrangement and strategic alignment. Like we were talking about stocks and not a 6-month charade, where I'd pretend to be madly in love with the man who shattered me. "You'll play the role," he said, cool and clipped. Partner, public companion, someone I can be photographed with when necessary. "Why me?" I asked, hating that my voice trembled. He looked at me, then really looked, and I couldn't read a damn thing in those dark eyes. No regret, no nostalgia, just that maddening stillness. "Because you're believable. You know how to sell an illusion. And because we have history." He was right. We had history. A messy, twisted, painfully unresolved history. Strictly professional, he added. No emotion. No entanglements. Just appearances. And like an idiot, I said yes. Because the paycheck was enough to pay off the medical bills that buried my sister. Because the contract offered security I hadn't felt in 2 years. Because, deep down, some traitorous part of me still wanted to understand why he'd destroyed me. But here's what no one warns you about fake relationships. They're never as fake as you want them to be. But I did. My name is Ava Monroe. And this is the story of how the man who ruined my life offered to save it. With a lie that felt a lot like love. Chapter 1. The offer. The lobby of Blackwell Industries was everything you'd expect from a billion-dollar tech empire. Glass, chrome, and silent judgment. The kind of place where heels weren't just fashion, they were armor. Ava Monroe strode through it like she still belonged there. Head high, shoulders squared, designer heels tapping like a metronome of controlled rage. She was dressed in black like the text had commanded. Sleek, understated, powerful. A silk blouse tucked into high-waisted trousers. Bold red lipstick her only act of rebellion. Her phone buzzed again. 17 notifications. All news outlets. Gossip blogs. Industry insiders. Is Ava Monroe back with Dominic Blackwell? Scandal-ridden CEO reunites with ex-PR guru damage control or something more? She didn't have the energy to respond, let alone care. She swiped the notifications away with a thumb. As she stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the executive floor, each ding brought her closer to him, and to the contract that would either save her or unravel her completely. 23 floors up, the conference room was made of glass and intimidation. Sleek steel chairs, a marble table, and, of course, him, Dominic Blackwell. He stood at the far end, a silhouette of power in an expertly tailored suit. Tall, lean, composed. His black hair was neatly combed, not a strand out of place. His jaw clenched as he turned to face her, and for a second, something unreadable flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. "You're late," he said, voice low and smooth like aged whiskey. "I was busy deciding whether or not to set this building on fire," she said sweetly, walking toward the table and setting down her leather portfolio. "Decided against it for now." His lips twitched just slightly. Not quite a smile. More like approval. "Still dramatic," he murmured. "Nice to see some things haven't changed." She crossed her arms. "Cut the crap, Dominic. What do you want?" He nodded once and slid a folder toward her. "The contract. 6 months," he said. "You'll be seen with me at events, public appearances, a few interviews. We'll stage some personal moments for the press, nothing too invasive. And in return, you'll be paid enough to rebuild whatever you've lost." He paused. "And then some." She stared at him. This wasn't just a PR stunt. This was control. This was him, once again, pulling the strings, only this time she was letting him. "What happens if I fall in love with you?" she asked, arching a brow. He didn't blink. "Then you'll have broken the first rule," he said quietly. "Don't fall in love. This is not real, Ava." And yet, as she picked up the pen, as her fingers hovered over the signature line, her heart beat just a little faster, because she didn't know what was more dangerous. "I used to dream about making him hurt, about watching his carefully curated empire collapse, about seeing his name dragged through the headlines the way he had let mine be. Because he didn't just break my heart. He broke my reputation, my career, my future, all with a few carefully chosen words." Ava Monroe lacked the emotional discipline to lead a crisis team. Her decisions were impulsive, risky, not grounded in business sense. That single quote uttered during a keynote panel, no less, had been enough to burn my career to ash. He never said my name outright, but he didn't have to. Everyone in the industry knew who had been handling the brandmark account. I had been the rising star, the golden girl, the one PR executives whispered about in elevators like a legend in the making, until Dominic Blackwell decided I was a liability. The fallout was swift and ruthless. Clients disappeared. Contracts vanished. My inbox, once overflowing with partnership requests and interview invitations, went cold overnight. I became a cautionary tale. Too emotional, too unstable, too dangerous for high-profile clients. And Dominic? Dominic thrived. He walked away untouched, unbothered, and apparently unrepentant. More successful than ever. New ventures, glowing headlines, board seats, interviews with Forbes and The Times. His face was everywhere, confident, composed, invincible. I spent the next 2 years rebuilding in the shadows, taking freelance work I hated, swallowing my pride just to pay rent, watching the world celebrate the man who had cut me down like I was dead weight. So when my phone buzzed at 7:42 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and his name lit up on the screen for the first time in 739 days, I stared at it for a full minute, my fingers frozen above the screen. Dominic Blackwell. Dinner. 8 p.m. Wear black. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a command, as if no time had passed. As if we weren't enemies. As if he hadn't buried me beneath polished words and fake smiles. I should have thrown the phone across the room. I should have deleted the message, poured myself a glass of cheap wine, and moved on with the small, steady life I'd managed to salvage. But instead, I walked to my closet, and 45 minutes later, I stepped into a black silk dress and a pair of red heels. Not because I forgave him, not because I wanted him, but because I wanted answers. And maybe, just maybe, a part of me wanted revenge. Chapter 1. The Offer. The elevator hummed as it climbed toward the top floor of Blackwell Silent. Smooth and too slow for her liking. Ava Monroe stared at her reflection in the polished chrome doors, taking inventory. Her lipstick was flawless, the red so sharp it looked like a weapon. Her dark eyes were lined with the kind of confidence she didn't feel. Her hair was pinned back in a sleek twist, elegant and professional. Her dress fit like it had been tailored for war.